and they can provide you with that. Probably in China it's not the same way, and in Brazil wasn't the same way. So we need to give a step back and create a species list, and then secondly, create an information platform that could manage all the data and centralize that in a way that people could put things in there, and also use that, use the tools that we could provide them to different stuff. So before doing red lists, I think it's even more important to develop national mechanisms to manage data, you know? Because if you do that, you're going to be able to do red listing. You're going to be able to do action planning. You're going to be able to make a difference for the species. So I think that's very important at the national level. And before doing red lists, you need to do your homework and organize the data inside your country. So I think that's an important issue to be raised.
Thank you. One more comment, and then I guess in the last 10 minutes, I'm just going to stick the questions that Jonathan mentioned earlier, and we can have a quick discussion if there are any that are particular.
Very short comment, which is also maybe part of an answer to what you mentioned. We do have the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, and we do have a catalog of life, and maybe some of you remember a project called Species 2000, which should implement a website for every species on the world in the year 2000. They didn't quite get ready. Now EOL is taken over. So my question is, how do you relate to all these other projects which are going on? And I've forgotten the LPI, the Living Planet Index. How is the relation of these national, international red list thing to all the other ongoing projects? And more concrete, how's the aftermath of this workshop? How do we stay connected?
Take this one.
Okay. Certainly we do use Species 2000, or we have used that in the past, and we are closely linked with GBIF. My colleague Craig Hilton Taylor knows much more about this. He already is in touch with GBIF and works very closely with them. So the IUCN Red List does actually rely on these resources as well. So we are actually linked. We're not actually physically linked, like databases all talking to each other, but there are developments underway and discussions underway to see how we can actually link all of these resources together. There is a basic taxonomic structure issue to make sure these different systems actually talk together in the same way, in the same language. So that issue has to be solved. Sorry, what was the second question?
The second question is
the
aftermath
of this workshop. I think over to Rebecca and John Paul.
Yeah, well, the best way is to get in contact with Jonathan, to the National Red List's website, who are the ones who handle the communication with the different participants, especially if you're able to participate in the workshop that he's going to convene later this year on how to support the network of National Red Lists. That will be in London sometime this year or next year, I think. I can't imagine anything else this year. But that would be the best way to do it. And definitely we're always trying to connect with the other databases to make sure that the format that the information is being produced in these different sites is converging into a standardized kind of aspect and data. So hopefully, it's not that easy to make them all connected, but they definitely are resources that link to each other all the time. They all have links to the different pages in different places. It's a way to make sure that at least information is available through one portal.
So I guess in the last 10 minutes, I can't quite see these, but if there's any comments or if anybody has any suggestions about how we might be able to build up funds for doing national red lists, what kinds of things we might want to make sure that we include in building up a supportive network, and also taking that one step further, helping to keep that network self-sustainable, because IUCN, the IUCN Global Species Program, the National Red List Working Group, we're always here and we really are supporting National Red Lists and really want to help provide as much information and support as we can. But eventually, ideally, this would be something that would grow into a mutual support network amongst national red listers. So rather than having to constantly be held up by IUCN, it's something that could really, take off and form a life of its own, so that national red listers can then direct how that grows rather than that coming more top down from IUCN. So any thoughts you might have on that? And then if anyone has any comments on new conservation tools to be developed, tackling the red list is often a very big first step before you then develop indicators and things using red list data. But those last two questions, if anyone has any comments on those. So I would say anyone with any comments on any of these questions in any IUCN language, feel free to speak.
But I'm not quite happy with your answer to the aftermath. So what I want to suggest with the improvement of the National Red List website is to include some social media component. At the IUCN Congress itself demonstrated quite successfully. I mean, these workshop websites we have and the sub-sites we have for the fora are quite efficient, and you can connect with Twitter, and you can post comments, and I don't know what. I don't know how long this infrastructure will be maintained, but I hope maybe 1 month or 2 months more, so we could exchange maybe our emails and keep a little bit thinking on our comments here. So I think that would help a lot. And the other thing is avoid double work. I just saw with horror that the European Red List workshop is right parallel to this one here. So that's not good.
Well, that's out of our hands.
In the case of the supporting network, I think it is very important, especially on the national level, because it only is in that space when they can be like a unified criteria between different specialists, because there have been cases that in the global red list there have been one specialist communicating and different churches. And I remember, for example, the cases with the Cuban crocodile that in Barcelona it was changed of status to like critically endangered, while there were proposals to put it out from CITES and second appendix. So there can be contradictions on the national level, different specialists in the case of countries out there, and that can be very, very good support in a way that this unified criteria can give better information to the global list. So maybe the workshop, the camp, the workshop to decide on different groups can be very important to bring together the people that are working in the conservation, I mean the protected areas, and the taxonomists that sometimes they haven't been in the field for a few years and still they have some criteria. So try to unify all of that will bring, I think, a better network support to the global list.
I think also something important is really to build the community of people working on National Red List. We are many people working in different countries on National Red List, and we are not in contact each other. And I don't know if the new website will allow this, but I think you should help to set a list of national focal points for Red List or other people interested in Red List, and find a way to help us communicate between each other, different ways, either forum or mail list, and maybe also a system or a list or newsletter or something to send us information regularly. And we really need this community of people to exchange experience, to exchange advice, and also to help you in the IUCN Red List unit, because you can't answer all the questions, but sometimes someone in the community can answer a question from someone else, and we need to find some kind of social tool, just as you say before. Do you think the new Red List website will help in this way, or what is the plan?
Actually, the old Red List website had that capacity. There was a forum that was available, and I don't know if it's because communication of the existence of that website didn't get out, or it's also difficult because the funding issue comes up, and you need in order to support an online forum, you really need someone who's moderating that forum and encouraging people to do it. So when we haven't had people in place as a permanent National Red List support person, that's been difficult. But I imagine that that will exist in the new site because it existed in the old site. So unless they've taken that out because it wasn't something that people engaged with. I think the key really is just, it becomes all of our responsibility and all of our pleasure to carry on the conversation after this session. And this is something that every time I get together with different people who are involved in National Red Lists, there's so much enthusiasm, there's so much excitement, and there's so much questions and uncertainty. And you really start generating a good dialogue, and the event ends, and that just ends. So at some point, what we really need to do is find some social media or newsletter or some kind of way to really keep that conversation going. And potentially building up a regional Red List network is the way to do that, because perhaps it's easier to communicate with others in your region. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's really the key, and that's really what we want to do, is somehow go from a lot of people that are separated with a lot of excitement to a big group of people, and then build on that excitement and help, boost each other up. And that's what we really need to keep things going. So.
Talk about just a suggestion regarding funding. There's a new CEO of the Global Environment Facility. The GEF relies heavily on Red List data as part of their allocations framework to determine how they allocate resources to other countries to gather additional biodiversity data. And so there's going to be a workshop on September 9th from 7 to 9 in room 303. And the new GEF CEO will be there discussing financing biodiversity, the new vision of the GEF. And also Gustavo Fonseca will be there, who's the team leader for biodiversity for the GEF. So I think particularly people from developing countries will be a really great opportunity to see what the GEF has in mind in terms of financing biodiversity, particularly associated with the Red List, which is an important source of information for them for the funding purpose.
Yeah, that's very important. And in fact, GEF, if the countries ask for money from Red List, they will get it, because it's driven very much by the country's plans about to invest. So if one thing that we can do is persuade our own governmental focal points or contacts, whoever is in charge of dealing with GF. And encourage, that's what I was trying to say at the beginning, was that coming from making the need explicit can drive some of the funding.
Can you just repeat the information for that workshop?
The workshop's called Financing Biodiversity, the new vision of the GEF, and it will take place Sunday, September 9th is Sunday, right? Yeah, Sunday, September 9th, from 7 to 9 p.m. in room 303.
I just have one more comment. From our experience, the one thing that would have helped us if we had a roadmap of exactly what does it entail to develop a Red List. Like the gentleman from Brazil mentioned, a really key issue is there are some foundation steps that we need to take to be able to do the Red List. And if that was, I'm not very familiar with the old website, but if in the new website, if you could, like you would need the requirements, let's say a checklist of what species you have to be able to do the Red List, that would help a lot. And the other thing, what we found difficult is how much, okay, we do want funding, but what is the budget? How do we do the budget breakdown? What does it entail? These are the details that we found quite difficult to maneuver around or get some information on. And then going on to the level of the regional, then we thought, okay, since we're doing the workshop and we finally got the funding, then let's make it on a regional level. So even if we don't have enough experts within our country, at least we can rely on others around our region, and that helped a lot.
I would say we have time for one more comment if anyone has anything to say. Otherwise, I'd just like to thank you for coming and for sharing your experiences and your ideas. I mean, really, it resides with us to take this forward, so thank you. London, come to me and I'll take down your contact details. The meeting in London that will be held later this year or next year about how to fund National Red List. Thanks.
Somebody will come. Yeah.